Some companies will box and box and like 40
We've hauled media boxes before.
Really?
I was going to the cold storage.
It's not even the money to check. Minutes out here.
Okay, if you turn to page 474. We're not going to write anything down. It's all right there, but I'll go through it. Production costs, just want to make sure you understand, they talk about fixed costs. Fixed costs, costs that don't change with output, fixed costs are costs that are independent of output. When we're talking about fixed costs, we're talking, again, of course, we have to, by definition, be talking about the short run. But fixed costs are things like buildings and equipment. Okay. The variable costs are, this says costs which change with the level of output, usually directly with output, and I know there are different hybrids in there, semi-variable or stepped or whatever names you use. We're just going to stay with fixed costs, variable costs. And if you add the fixed costs and the variable costs together, you get the total costs. And at the bottom of page 474, in the first four columns, they give us this cost data, this hypothetical company, starting with the total product in column 1. In other words, if they produce anywhere from 0 units up to 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10. Notice in column 2, total fixed costs are $100 even when they're producing nothing. Okay, and this is, again, this is a characteristic of fixed costs, is that they don't disappear if you stop production. They are independent of output, even 0, so they're always there. Your total variable costs, of course, are going to increase as you produce more. As we'll see later, though, they're not always going to be increasing at the same rate. But it does what we expect it to do. As we produce more, our variable costs increase. And then, of course, column 4 is simply the addition of 2 and 3, columns 2 and 3. If we were to graph this, fixed costs would be someplace along here. Okay, we'll start right at, this is 0. This would be our output quantity. This would be dollars. So our fixed costs would be a flat or horizontal line, greater costs, right? Our variable costs are going to look something like this. They're not going to be a straight line upsloping. Actually, variable costs are going to go like this up. They're going to flatten out a little bit, and then they're going to go up. And this will be variable costs. And the reason it has this kind of a shape is because what happens is you tend to be very inefficient in the beginning. Okay, then you become efficient. You have to think about what this curve is telling you. Okay, this is our room here, and we're making desks. Okay, what I've done here is I've hired one person. Okay, well, that one person is actually pretty expensive because it's pretty hard for one person to make any quantity of desks all by themselves. Okay, so even though I'm increasing quantity in this direction, it's becoming very expensive to make these first few units. So it's going up steeply. Now the curve starts to level out, because as I produce more, I hire 2 or 3 or 4 more people, and they start to specialize. Now we can increase quantity. Maybe I made it a little bit, shouldn't have made it so flat, but anyway, you get the idea. As I increase quantity, I've hired more people, we're more specialized, we're a much more efficient operation. So I'm increasing quantity a lot faster than my costs are going up. Now, after I've reached a certain point, I start to hit diminishing returns. Okay, so I got to this point here where everybody was really operating as a team, and I had specialization and optimal and stuff, and now we're starting to get diminishing returns, and I'm still producing more, but my costs are starting to go up faster, at a faster rate. Okay, so we have sort of inefficient production, we go into efficient, more efficient production, and then we start to get inefficient again. That's my variable costs. Now, of course, my fixed costs remain the same. Now, the way you get total costs on a graph is exactly the same way you get it in a table. You add it. In other words, the way we got column 4 was we took column 2, which was total fixed costs, we took column 3, which is total variable costs, we added those two together, and we got column 4. The way I'm going to get total cost curve is to literally take and add these lines together. I mean, physically add the lines together. In other words, the distance here is 0 to this, and so it's going to start here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take fixed costs, and I'm going to add fixed costs to variable costs. Fixed costs and add it. Fixed costs and add it. That's literally what I'm doing. Of course, it's going to be the same, because fixed cost stays the same. But that's how you do it graphically. You add something, you literally, you add it, and that becomes my total cost. And you have that on page 475. And this distance here, any vertical distance here, it's got to be the same as this vertical distance. Got to be the same, and they will be the same as the amount of fixed costs. Again, the equation is you can take total costs, subtract variable costs, and what's left is fixed costs, which has to be the same as this distance here. Please be careful that when you're working with graphs like this, especially if you're not accustomed to using graphs, you always deal with either the vertical distance or the horizontal distance. In other words, there's a real temptation when you're here is to try and measure this distance here. Okay, saying, well, you know, they're curves, I should measure like the one that's perpendicular to the line. And no, you don't. That has no meaning whatsoever. It's always the vertical distance, or it could be the horizontal. In this case, it's the vertical distance that shows. Okay, questions? Okay, as we continue on page 474 then, we come across, on the table on 474, on the other pages, we come across some other definitions. And again, I'm going through them fast, so if you have problems, please raise your hand. We have average fixed costs. Now we're just going to call them AFC from now on. Average fixed costs, you're simply taking your fixed costs and dividing it by the output. So column 5 is column 2 divided by 1. So really have 0. You don't have anything for the first average because you're not having it, you're dividing by 0. That's why there's a blank on the first line. But when you're producing 1, it's $100 divided by 1 is 100. $50 divided by 2 is, $100 divided by 2 is $50, etc. Your average variable costs, again, that's simply taking columns 3 divided by 1. It's given to you there. You're taking your total variable cost divided by the quantity. And then your average total cost. 2 ways to calculate your average total cost. One is to take your total cost divided by your quantity. The other way is just to add up your average fixed cost plus your average variable cost. They better give you the same answer if they don't make a mistake. Questions? questions up to, it through column 7. We'll hold off on 8 for a minute. Now, if we graph this, and this is very important to understand how we graph it, because we're going to be using this a lot. Quantity here, dollars here. Now that, here I was dealing with total. In other words, total fixed cost, total variable cost, and total cost. Now what I want to do is I want to grab average. Now my average fixed costs, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this table on page 474 and graph it out for you. Average fixed cost, I'll start at 0, I'm going to start at 1. Can't very well start at 0 because, that would, again, like I said, that would be dividing by 0. It's going to be a garbage answer, so I start at 1. My average fixed cost, I'm going to start out here at about $100. About, it will, exactly 100. And then I'm just plotting down, 100, 50, 33. Notice my average fixed cost is decreasing, but it's decreasing at a decreasing rate. So I'm going to have average fixed costs that are going to look something like this. And that's average fixed cost. If I graph then the average variable costs, okay, my average variable cost started at $90, and my average variable cost then they're going to start at about here. And my fixed cost started at 100, my average variable can start at 90. They're going to go down, and then they'll come up. So this becomes my average variable costs. And notice what I'm doing here is I'm getting sort of this curvature here in my average. Remember what I said was, well, we start off being fairly inefficient, then we get efficient, and we get inefficient, okay? But what I started off with was a high cost, and then I got efficient, and then after I reached some maximum efficiency or most efficient level here, then I started to become inefficient again. Inefficient, I'm not saying that I was starting to lose money or anything like that. It's just I wasn't producing as efficiently as I was before. And that's why that curve starts to go back up again. Now to get my average total costs, again, I can graph the numbers here, but it's also going to be the same thing. The average total cost is going to be the sum of the two. In other words, I'm going to take and I'm going to add this to this. So I'm going to start someplace up here. And I'm going to have a line that looks something like this, which is average total costs. And you see that? It's on page 476. And that's what I just drew. Questions? In the next several chapters, you will be sick of this. In the long run, of course, all we have is an average total cost. Right? Have any variable costs or fixed costs or anything like that. One of the things that we want to look at this is where would be our most efficient level of production? Well, maybe we should start before that. How would you define the most efficient level of production? I guess we better decide that we're talking from society's point of view. Because otherwise you might say it's where you make the most money.
Right before, on the variable cost, right before it starts going up again.
The variable cost? Why the variable cost?
Well, okay, maybe the total, I'd go with total cost.
Okay, why, okay, just
I was
before it goes up,
thinking-
why, but why at that point? I mean, your answer is correct, what you're saying is that it's at the low point of your
Because-
average total cost.
Because the average is starting, per unit is starting to go up again.
Okay, why is this the most efficient level though? I mean, how are you defining efficiency then?
At the lowest total cost, at the lowest level,
Okay, average.
average total.
Yeah. It's your cheapest per unit cost of production. Okay, that's why I said we sort of have to look at it from society's point of view, because some business may say, well, they might define efficiency in a different way. They might define it in terms of maximizing profits or something like that. But hopefully we'd agree, as a rule, efficiency would, at least one way, could be defined as the lowest average cost, or the lowest per unit cost. And that means that that's gonna be right there at our average total cost. Lowest point on the average total cost is the most efficient. Most efficient level of production. So we would go down here and say X. If we produce X number of goods, we'll be producing at our most efficient level. Question? Okay, the next thing I want to look at is marginal cost. Column 8 on page 474. Now, marginal cost is the, again, you should be familiar with the word marginal. Marginal cost is the additional cost of producing one more output, one more unit of output. It's the additional cost of producing one more unit of output. And so in column 8, the way we get it is by taking the change in column 4. In other words, when we didn't produce anything, we had fixed costs of 100. When we had one unit of production, it was $190, and so the marginal cost of producing the first unit was 90, because it went from 100 to 190. To produce the second unit, we went from 190 to 270. We added $80 of cost. The marginal cost of the second unit is $80. I don't know why they always put it in between. I would line up the 90 with the 1 and the 80 with the 2, but they put it in between. Best way to think is always it's going down. And so we're go down, points down. Notice what happens to your marginal cost. Your marginal cost decreases, goes from 90, 80, 70, 60, and then it hits a low point, then it starts to go back up. Okay. The marginal cost starts to go back up, 70, 80, 90, 110, 130, 150. Draw a separate one here just with the average, bring that down a little bit. Average variable costs. and Average total costs. Now, if I graph the marginal cost, starts someplace up here. Marginal costs will come down very fast, and then it's going to go up like this. That's what my marginal cost curve is going to look like. And again, as far as graphing it, really all I've done is I've taken this, the numbers here in column 8 and graphed them. one of the important things that happens here is that marginal cost, right there, marginal cost intersects average total cost at its lowest point. Your marginal cost will intersect average total cost at its lowest point. In fact, it will also intersect average variable cost at its lowest point. We're not concerned about that. What we're really concerned with is that it intersects average total cost at the lowest point. Now, you can go down and you can see that that happens by comparing column 7 and column 8. Marginal cost, 60, 70, and total cost is 94. At 6 units, total cost is 91, marginal is 80. At 7 units, total cost is 91, average total cost is 91, marginal cost is 90. And that seems to be about where it bottoms out. And then when you go to 8 units, all of a sudden average total cost is going back up again. It's 93.75 and marginal cost is 110. It intersects right there. Of course, we're dealing with discrete numbers, so we don't see an exact match. But we can see that right at about 7 units, that's where, at 7 units, that's where average total cost is at its minimum, right? $91.43. And also at 7 units, marginal cost is 90, which is real close to 91.43, which means it's going to intersect. In other words, this point here is going to be right about $91. Any questions on it? Now, the question becomes, I think this is part of the homework problem too. Why? Why do we know as a mathematical fact that marginal cost will cut average total cost at its lowest point? Can you tell me why? Homework assignment. Tell me why. Marginal cost cut average total cost at its lowest point. Okay. I'll tell you. Okay, this is your average. Okay, right? This is your average total cost. Okay, keep in mind what it will, how do you calculate an average? What you do is you add up everything that goes into it and you divide them. So you produce 2 units, so you add up 2 units, and the total cost of 2 units, and then divide it by 2 and you get an average. And then if you produce a 3rd unit, you add the cost of the 3rd unit to it, to the cost of producing the first 2, and then you get the cost of producing 3 units, you divide it by 3. Okay. What is the marginal cost? The marginal cost is the additional cost of producing 1 more unit. So what we have here is we have average costs. Now, at any point along here, the marginal cost is less than the average, right? In other words, the cost of producing 1 more unit is less than our existing average. So what happens if we've got an average up here that, let's say the average up here is $110, and we produce another unit and the cost of producing 1 more unit is $70. What happens to our average? It's got to go down, right? I mean, you got an average of $110, it costs you $70 to produce 1 more unit. You add the $70 in and you have a new divisor, and now your average has got to be lower. So anytime that the marginal cost is below this line, the line's got to keep dropping because the additional cost is lower than the average. It's bringing your average down. Right? Now as soon as it crosses here, it gets above average total cost, now the additional cost is higher than the average, so now when you produce one more unit and recalculate the average, now your average is higher. Okay? Think of this as your overall grade point average. And this is your grade point average for each individual term. This is like term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, okay? So first, term 1 you did real good, you got a 4.0. And then you have a bunch of trouble for 3 or 4 terms. And you have a 3.0 and a 2.5 and a 2.0. What happens? Your total GPA starts to go down, right? Because each term that you have less than your average pulls your average GPA down. Okay, until you get down here and you got a GPA of 3.5. Okay, now you're taking some good courses and all of a sudden you get another 4.0. What happens to your average? It starts to go back up. So again, it's not like the author says, well, I'm going to draw the graph to make it come out this way, or I'm going to just finesse the number so that it comes out this way. Mathematically, it has to come out this way. Because what this marginal cost is doing is it's saying, you add this number to the average and recalculate the average, or add this number to the total and recalculate a new average. And if you're recalculating a number that's lower, it drags your average down, and if it's higher, it pulls it up. So where marginal cost cuts average total cost will give you the lowest point, which means also that where marginal cost equals average total cost is your most efficient. It's your most efficient level of production. Because we already defined most efficient level of production as the lowest average total cost. Questions on that? This is, of course, what we're looking here is the short run. Right, because you can tell it's a short run because I've got variable costs and fixed costs. What I want to do is I'll just keep it up here. I want to derive the long run average total cost curve. And this is given on page 480 if you want to follow along. Again, the thing to keep in mind is this, that the most efficient level of production, or the lowest average total cost, okay, is the minimum point here. That's our most efficient level of production. And even for a firm, you know, if they could, this is where they would like to produce, right? I mean, every firm would like to produce at this, not necessarily the level, but they'd like to produce at a cost which is the lowest possible average total cost per unit. So they're going to try and minimize this. Now, if we look at the long run, here's what we have in the long run. In the long run total cost curve is really an average of all the short run total cost curves. The average total cost curve is the long run total cost curve is an average of all the short run total cost